All righty then. This is the Fairfield Harbor Management Commission Plan Update Committee meeting, Thursday, July 16, 2020. This is Kim Taylor. I am chair of the commission, and any public comments can be sent to hmc@fairfieldct.org with HMC Plan Update in the subject line. So that gets us going. Jack, you had minutes from August 2018.
Right.
I thought we had met after that when we...
I wasn't in that meeting after that.
Yeah.
Okay.
We met
right.
downstairs on the first, it's Jeff, Jim, in the first floor conference room with Jim Harmon.
Right.
And Mark was there.
Right.
And so was Ed.
Oh,
if you
Ed
recall,
was there too.
Ed Billings was there. We were talking then about trying to have a public meeting in
Right.
Remember before Jim and the others were off the commission. Correct. And then it obviously it didn't work out, and we felt that was too rushed, and it was not enough time to organize properly and get people to, and then the virus.
Then the virus
restrictions.
So
came about.
Yeah. So the minutes that we have are good. If Jack, if you don't have any other minutes, then probably don't exist. And do you mind taking minutes for this meeting?
That's fine.
Okay. When on the agenda, I have review presentation to commissioners. What I'm thinking is that we need to take a step back before we proceed with the tentative plans that we made at that meeting in last fall. We need to get the commissioners up to speed, I think.
Uh-huh. Yeah.
And so I'm not quite sure when we're going to be able to do that. It could be soon, it could be later, and I'm just wondering, what your thoughts are on what your thoughts are.
Did you have any response from the first select woman about having a meeting?
I did,
in the town hall next week?
I did, and we have the opportunity to do that, to have an in-person meeting, so that you and Jim Bradley can present. And the fly in the ointment today is that we're not sure that Jim Bradley is available, and he won't know until till later today or first thing tomorrow. So, if it's a go on Tuesday, then that really kind of takes care of beginning to get the other commissioners up to speed. If it's not a go, I think we have to postpone it till August, and then try to get permission to do an in-person meeting in August for purposes of the presentation.
Betty also mentioned the possibility of having a special meeting,
right?
Which could be scheduled on relatively short notice.
Sooner than August. Right.
Yeah, sooner than just for the purpose of discussing the origin of the plan and the and what we need to do.
And I think the town is open to that if we are going to do it just as a one-time special purpose meeting. They clearly don't want us to meet in face-to-face regularly. I mean, that's just not in the cards. So,
if we were to have that meeting, would we be able to get some assistance from the IT people and a person in the town to make sure the visual system is loaded and working properly?
I hope so. I haven't even. Yeah.
Because that's what they were going to do with the meeting. That, well, I guess that we were set up to do that, and then the meeting was postponed. But there's a system that was installed in the. Well, I know it's downstairs too, but it was upstairs in that conference room, built in, so that they just need someone to help us set it up.
Okay. Well, if we're allowed to, if we're able to proceed with this, it would be in the old town. The meeting would have to be in the big conference room in the old town hall.
That's right.
So I know nothing about that room except it's bigger than the room that we meet in.
That's right.
And perhaps if this is a go, we can enlist Betty's help to find out.
Yes.
So.
Forgot about that.
Yeah.
Just so I'm clear, we're talking now about the training for commissioners that you guys were going to do, not talking about that presentation that you put together, Jeff, for presentation to the public, right? Are they different presentations?
No, it's the same thing.
The same presentation.
Yeah.
Okay. Thank you.
No, I have to coordinate with Jim. I don't know if Jim had I think Jim was doing something on his own as well.
Right. He had 10 slides, 10 or 11 slides, I think he told me.
And I think his was from the perspective more of the yacht club, but I'm not sure about that.
Okay.
But we stopped talking. Once the virus restrictions started, Jim and I stopped talking about this.
Well, I'm waiting to hear from him. If you want, Jeff, wanted to get in touch with him and just, because I think what I would do they won't give it. If Jim can't make it on Tuesday, then I guess we could either try for a special meeting or wait until our August meeting.
I
guess
one
of the
I'm sorry. No, I didn't mean to interrupt. I can call Jim this afternoon. I don't know if he's away, but I can call him.
Okay. I guess one of the other concerns that I have is that, Jack, you and I talked about the plan, the update, including changes to rules and procedures, and how we would incorporate that kind of learning and process into the sort of I'll call it the original plan that we had, which was to focus on the plan update, the 2 dredging projects, and the online mooring as sort of the four-pronged focus that the committee had. So.
Jeff, I was just thinking that it would make sense to make sure that the rules and procedures and the plans sync up nicely to do them at the same time, both updates.
Yeah.
Right. And I agree with that.
Right.
Yeah. And in our list of priorities, we added that as number 4: implement and fine-tune new mooring administration procedures.
Okay, so it would be under the.
It fits right in. Yes.
Okay. And then I guess the 5th one is something that Ed has brought up a couple of times, and I don't know if how we would, where we would have the issue of our jurisdiction.
Oh.
And whether that's something to be considered.
Jeff, Ed shared with me this last week that he's thinking that it would be good for our jurisdiction to expand to include the waters off of Fairfield Beach. He's not talking about the rest of the town. He's talking about up through that point because he thinks that there's good reason for the jurisdiction to go around the point and spread down to the east towards Fairfield Beach and encompass those waters. So, anyhow, he asked me to talk to Kim about that. I suggested to him that he needs to think about the arguments for in favor of that? What are the reasons for that, so that we can have a fuller discussion with the full HMC about it? So I assume he's doing that.
And then that would mean we'd have to go up into Pine Creek.
Right.
Right.
Well, it
he
adds.
Didn't really explain the thinking behind it, but I suggested that would be important to have the rationale thought through and how to deal with the objections to that rationale if he's going to bring it up to the full commission.
And then everyone who wants to do something along the shoreline there and
come to us instead, right?
Subject to review by the commission. Right. This was brought up not a number of times, but several times. And there are some moorings offshore of Fairfield Beach and off of there.
Right. I think that he's getting. I think he mentioned to us before that he's getting some prodding from deep folks about having that be part of his responsibility as opposed to people going directly to deep.
Yeah. Right. And
well, we do get the last couple of months we've had applications and that the town has made to deep, for the dealing with through the town has made through the conservation department and DPW dealing with the creeks and the streams over there by Ash Creek. So I mean, I guess in some ways deep sees us as part of that whole process anyway.
Maybe the Pine Creek. Well, we could do this. Whether we can, I don't know that we can do it right, as part of what we're doing right now. But the significant part of Pine Creek is the wetlands back in the creek, and that's probably the most prominent or preeminent or whatever you want to call it, wetland restoration project in the state of Connecticut.
Really?
Oh yes, that's like the centerpiece of wetland restoration in Connecticut. There was a flood control dike that we spent a lot of time working on this that went through there in the 1950s, and it blocked off all the wetlands up into Pine Creek, and they all turned to Phragmites, and they caught fire, and so the Conservation Commission. I have a bunch of stuff that we wrote about this, and this is actually, I don't want to say genius, but Tom Stanke invented the self-regulating tide gate. So they put those self-regulating tide gates into that, where you walk from the old Nike site up to where the dump was, and the self-regulating tide gates protected the marsh, north and west of that, and then they breached the flood control dike out to the east, but they brought that in. The tidal prism came back in there, restored all the wetlands before the self-regulating tide gates. The tide gates allowed enough water to go back up in behind them to restore the wetlands without, and they'd automatically close when you got to a flood-causing elevation. So all of that tidal area then becomes subject to oversight and management by the Harbor Management Commission. And the key thing for years was still is, determining what the necessary tidal prism is to be able to keep those wetlands healthy. And when the flood control dike was breached, anyway, I'm going on and on, but there's this significant intertidal considerations in Pine Creek that would then be the protection of those wetlands and the maintenance of the tidal prism. That would all be subject then to the policies of the Harbor Management Plan. It's very interesting. We have all the data.
Jeff, the definition of where the harbor management area begins and ends in some new designation could be negotiated, I guess. It wouldn't necessarily have to include the wetlands, would it?
Well, the jurisdiction is waterward of mean high water. Now, within the and so that mean high water, I think if we were to expand the jurisdiction, we'd want to do that up into Pine Creek, because then you're establishing, in a document that has a a good amount of legal weight with the state, you're establishing those wetland protection and conservation policies.
Interesting. Okay.
Yeah, it's real interesting. I have a whole bunch of stuff on that. The Conservation Commission, years ago, we prepared a open space coastal, what do we call it? Management plan for coastal open space, which included, all the policies for that area. But that plan has no weight. It's just a guidance, and the Conservation Commission probably forgot about it by now. But I mean, this is really, expanded. But there's no reason that long term we couldn't do that. Update the plan now, and then add to it. But you'd have to change the jurisdiction through a change of the town code.
Right. Exactly.
Right. Right.
So it's more than I think the managing moorings, if we were to do, is not particularly significant relative to the big environmental matters in that in Pine Creek.
Right.
I'll send you some stuff about that we have.
Okay.
But yeah.
But it's my take on kind of what the plan stands for, if you will, a settlement between the yacht club and the federal government, does it not? In a very general kind of way about how the harbor is going to be run.
That was the reason for doing the plan, yes.
Right. So if we were to change the jurisdictional area, we've really stepped out beyond what at least the original intent of the plan and plan was, and the intent that the parties had.
Yeah. Well, I don't mean to keep talking, but in a way, yes, but I don't think it's necessarily a negative thing, because the Harbor Management Authority, is provided by the state, and the Harbor Management Authority is to both, coastal resource conservation as well as safety and beneficial use. Right. The town used that authority, to address the issues that were brought up in the 1980s.
Yeah.
But the authority is, there wasn't just authority to solve this issue. It was authority for the municipality to manage its coastal waters. So
the question, I guess, another way of Kim's question, I guess, is why wasn't the harbor management area inclusive of the whole town when it was set up in the first place?
Because that's a good question. I have to go back and look, but I'm Kim's right. I mean, the pressing issue was Southport Harbor and the enforcement and the regulatory issues.
It's interesting because it was never just confined to the inner harbor where all those issues were cropping up. It goes all the way over to the border with Westport to the west. Right. What's interesting is it didn't go very far to the east. So none of us were party to that discussion, but it's interesting.
Right.
Yeah.
Right.
I've got a document that was done by the first consultants that worked on this, and then they worked on it for about a year, and then they wanted more money, and so that didn't go anywhere. But it's not quite clear how, why they. But I don't know. I don't know the precise answer how they established that boundary. The Southport Outer Harbor.
Yeah.
From Kenzie Point and then up into Sasko Creek.
Right.
But I think it probably would be important to, even if we don't think about changing the jurisdiction for this go-round, I think it's obvious it would be important to have a reason, so because obviously if Deep keeps calling Ed and saying, why aren't you acting on these things that are going on further east of us, there are people who think that we should be responsible for a greater area.
Including apparently our harbor master.
Yeah.
Wow.
And,
so it feels like we need to discuss it, and it does seem, Jeff, to me that if we were going to be, at this point, working with the town to change the jurisdiction on the eastward boundary, that this would be a good time to be putting those pieces in motion as we updated the plan.
Yeah.
But when you brought this up, I think it's, for what it matters, what I think. It's a terrific idea. But it's more work and it's more responsibility. But since to include into a formal document that's adopted by the town and approved by the state of Connecticut, the guidelines and the policies for protecting and enhancing the intertidal area in Pine Creek, you'd basically be putting that into a formal document.
Wow. The intentions for the long term and the management of it.
Yeah.
So it would be a whole new section of a new harbor management plan going forward.
Now, we also looked at those moorings offshore of Fairfield Beach a few years ago with the Shellfish Commission. And I have to find this. We had an agreement between the Shellfish Commission and DEEP, and probably DEEP doesn't even remember it now, but we could find it. That before, since the harbor master doesn't have authority there, DEEP does through some, I forget the actual regulatory authority, to approve moorings, non-harbor moorings that aren't managed by a harbor master. And in this instance, there was an agreement that they would consult Deepwood with the Shellfish Commission. So somebody placing a mooring out there now, they have to get proper approval. They have to register for a general permit for non-harbor moorings. And the DEEP's agreement was that if they got such a registration, they would check with the Fairfield Shellfish Commission before saying it's okay. We wrote some stuff about that. They probably forgot all about that, but they just as soon have the harbor master deal with it, and not them, I guess.
Yeah. Right. And what about? I mean, there are folks who have docks and moorings, and well, I don't know about moorings, but certainly docks and boats up Pine Creek.
Oh, yeah. See,
I mean, that's just
yes, and that's a significant. That's a significant thing with respect to the effect on the tidal flows going up into the creek. The more encroachments into the creek with seawalls and docks, it's an interference with that tidal prism, and to the extent that you want to, it's really fascinating. But there's a lot of stuff that we already wrote about for conservation that could be plugged right into a harbor management plan. But then the problem is getting it adopted and approved. Because the property owners are certainly would not certainly, but would likely object to know that in addition to dealing with DEEP, they'd have to deal with the Harbor Commission too.
Right.
and the land use stuff. Yeah.
Yeah. Doesn't the Conservation Commission don't they oversee the wetlands and
but
activity?
See that it's. And I don't want to speak because the Conservation Commission, and I don't know, I haven't been involved with it for a number of years, since Tom retired. And I don't know, and Brian, works with them and so forth. But, years ago, my understanding, the Conservation Commission was very active. In fact, it was one of the first conservation commissions in Connecticut, and they had the first conservation director in Connecticut, which was Tom Stanky, who was Tom Stanky. But they also have the function as the Inland Wetlands Agency. So it's the same body of people, but inland wetlands is I believe a much more immediate responsibility, which is giving permits for inland wetlands work. And so I don't know the extent to which they're involved with conservation stuff now. But again, they don't have the authority. The Conservation Commission's authority is advisory, recommendations to people.
Oh, okay.
The Harbor
Commission Harbor Management Commission, then they have to have a good reason for varying from what our rules are.
Yes. The recommendations are supposed to be binding on, or to be binding on people.
The town would have more control that way.
Yes. Yeah. But the property owners might, also.
They might not like. That's another place to go to for approval. But it would be their own town, not the state they're dealing with.
Yeah.
Yeah, and how Conservation Commission would but anyway, it's a fascinating topic, and whether we would want to go through this update to the plan now, and then have a policy about expanding into area, or having it as and then work on that as a separate, addendum after we get this update done. Anyway, I think it's really interesting.
I think just realistically, my suspicion is that this is not what Ed was thinking about. I think he was thinking about the seaward waters off of beach areas and the issues that harbor masters might get directly involved in.
Which, in my opinion, would be secondary in importance to the. But anyway, that's just my thought. Yeah.
Well, it also sounds like we have the grant to update the plan, which hasn't been done at all, and it seems to me that we run into a fair amount of headwind if we start talking about expanding our jurisdiction. That would certainly slow down.
Yes.
The process for doing what we really need to do, which is to update the existing plan.
Yes.
I wonder how the commission could function if we had an expanded jurisdiction with all those additional responsibilities.
Yes. Yep.
We'd need two of you, Jeff, not just one. And probably several more members.
Well, it's not unheard of, and I work for the town of Greenwich. If you call it work, what I do, but anyway, Greenwich has multiple harbors, as you know.
Right.
From Coscob and Greenwich Harbor and Greenwich Cove and the Byram River on the Greenwich side. It's got a substantial coastline, and it has a 7-member harbor management commission. And so they function the overview of the whole coastline of Greenwich. Not if it's not just like the harbor commission in Greenwich only deals with Greenwich Harbor, and Coscob and Greenwich Cove and the others are outside of their jurisdiction. So it's not unthinkable that there are other commissions. In other words, have bigger jurisdictions than the Southport Commission does. But whether you want to take on that, and if it would, dilute from the attention that we need to give now, including to the dredging project, and that's I'm sorry to be talking, but this morning I had one of the best meetings, best discussions on this that I've had. A woman from the Corps of Engineers called at 9 o'clock or 5 of 9. And said that they were having a discussion internally about the dredging project and the sandbar, and could I join them? So, do you mind if I talk about this now?
No, I don't.
It's part of the plan. And so there were 5 people from the Corps of Engineers, and they had a preliminary drawing that they've done. Which was very good. And then I asked Coral, the project manager, I called her afterwards and said, could I share it locally? And she said, no, don't do that yet because it's preliminary. And we don't want it, we just as soon control it until we, take it another step further. So they've come up with a concept plan of restoring the 100-foot width of the channel.
Excellent.
And they've got 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9 cross sections from the 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 9 cross sections that they've shown, and they've shown this side slope as a 3-to-1 horizontal to vertical side slope, and that sides for restoring the 100-foot channel. And that side slope doesn't go up. It cuts in a little bit to the vegetation, but not a significant amount. And I said that when we looked at this 15, 16, 17 years ago, the thought was that the side slope would be would cut back much more. It would be much more than 3-to-1 horizontal. It would be on the order of 8-to-1 or that and would cut way back because it's sand. And then the DEP, they imposed a 4-to-1 side slope. Sort of, I don't know how you impose it when It's not. But what the Corps was saying is that they've now got, with aerial imagery and LiDAR stuff and all however they look at this, they've got a better way of looking at the contours and predicting or establishing what the design side slope should be. So over time, they said that the natural side slope of that sandbar in the harbor there is 3-to-1. So that 3-to-1 side slope, to calculate the volume of sand that would come out of that, the impact on the grass, and then also the how long it's going to last before it silts, it builds up again. And there was a woman who's a coastal engineer, and I was on the phone today too, and she was talking about determining what the recurrence interval is. Is it 15 years or 20 years? But with the understanding that it's going to have to be done again. But also it's important to note that their task here, their scope of work, is maintenance dredging of the channel. It's not maintenance of the jetty. So I said, as part of what you're doing, will you be also proposing what we should do on the east side of the jetty? To create a trap or a sink or expose the east side. And they said, well, that's not our task right now. We're just tasking to dredge the channel. So if we want to, I still think we need to think about doing something on the east side. But we have a drawing now, or we're going to have in a bit, showing a plan to dredge that 100-foot width of the channel. We're going to have to discuss it with DEEP, but this in effect is our plan for channel maintenance that we include into the update of the harbor management plan.
Right.
For long term for channel maintenance. Now we may want to add to it something about the what to do on the east side. But I thought if someone says, well, you haven't done anything, on the update of the harbor management plan, well, we're working with the Corps. We've got them. I was very, very surprised that they've put this amount of effort into doing this as an ongoing maintenance dredging project that they're planning for the town.
Really?
So hopefully in the next short period of time I can share a more updated drawing. One thing they didn't want to do is get this out so that the DEP sees it right now until they think it through a little bit more. But they were talking about where is the sand coming from. I put together a bunch of aerial photos that show the sand offshore, interestingly, significant deposits of it. But anyway, that's another thing. And part of our presentation, we have a section on a little bit of the background of dredging, but also that's one of our priorities.
Okay. Where are they?
Can I ask a basic question on the process piece of this? What are we going to do differently now so that this doesn't bog down for 2 more years in this effort?
The plan update?
Yeah. What are we going to do differently?
I don't know, and I guess that gets to my number 3, plan for public input. I mean, I agree, Jack. I'm with you.
I feel like we almost need a project plan with some target dates, and we hold ourselves accountable to them, because every time we've worked at this, it just gets bogged down by one thing or another, and years go by.
Well, my other concern is that we also don't have. I mean, we don't have a lot of other people who are doing stuff, and you're managing the mooring stuff, and I'm trying to hold the commission, the bigger stuff together, and we need to have other commissioners on board, I think, to lend a hand.
I think that's right.
Well,
I think.
I think what happened, right. I mean, we could do this. We could do this, right now ourselves if we had, sit down and no interruptions, and update the plan. But we thought we were going to do is have basically a public meeting at the beginning of the process, and just out of sort of respect for the public process, start off by telling people we're updating the plan. This is what's in the plan.
Right.
What do you feel are issues that are important, rather than sort of, instead of updating the plan and telling people here it is.
Yeah, but personally, I have no argument with doing that. I just think we should just go ahead and do it. The presentation that we gave to the Board of Selectmen, not the Board, the RTM last January was a perfectly good presentation that you put together and would be suitable right now to give to the public. So if that's an early first step, which I think it should be, and we might get some very valuable feedback if we're successful with that, that would be a good first step, and then that could take us right into an intensive effort to update the rules and systematically go through the plan. And simultaneously, we could be thinking about this jurisdiction question. Do we entertain it? Do we entertain it in the future, et cetera, et cetera? But it just feels like, and we should invite, I think, other commissioners to get more actively involved in playing a role in this. But I don't know if we can. They'll either step up or they won't step up, but we need to do it either way.
Well, my plan was I've kind of been holding off drafting people to get involved or asking them until they heard from Jeff and Jim.
Yeah,
and sort of knew the basics.
I guess that my feeling now is if there's some reason we can't do this live, it would be better to just get going and do this in a phone call, a conference call, and do it with maybe sending out attachments in advance for people to look at while it's being described by telephone than to let it slip by for more time. Because I agree, they do need to be brought up to speed.
Right. Well,
who do we invite? How do we? Do we just?
I would say next Tuesday that we're now going to get going. We've been talking about this for 2 years. We're going to do it. Who here wants to be part of this? And that's going to mean getting involved in updating this big, thick document here and the rules. Right.
Oh, well, I was thinking about how do we get to the public?
How do we have? That also could be done by either a video conference or by telephone, and providing material available on the town website in advance for people to look at, like the presentation.
What? This is just thinking without thinking. But what if we had, we give this presentation and we also make an announcement that essentially had a little questionnaire or something on the town website that would ask people to, that are interested in Southport Harbor, what how they use the harbor, if they have any concerns, any suggestions that they'd want the Harbor Commission to address.
Rather than a presentation. Yeah.
No. In addition to the presentation, doesn't give them a chance to really.
There's no feedback.
There's no feedback, and
Right. No, I think that's a great idea.
What we did in Norwich and New London recently is we had a fairly extensive survey that was put on the town websites that people responded to, and then they were asked to prioritize. It would take a little. That wouldn't take much effort to do it, but it was a way of getting public input at the beginning, so people didn't think that they were just being bypassed. That they're now we have made draft to the goals and objectives and to the policies, and I have worked to update the maps that show existing conditions in the harbor. So we do have that. But anyway, if we could have this presentation on Tuesday, background, and then maybe give some thought as to some not an extensive survey, but I think we need to reach more people than just our mooring permit holders.
I agree.
Oh, definitely.
Boy, I could share with you I'll share with you the survey that's for example, that we just recently did in New London. It's a little bit different, but I think we could do something like that. But it's up to you. It's just thinking.
Well, what do we? How about? I mean, if Jim can't make the presentation on Tuesday, can't make the meeting on Tuesday, we have the town's permission to go ahead and have an in-person meeting. Are you comfortable, Jeff, just doing your part?
Oh, yeah.
And we could go ahead. I mean, I hate not to include him because he's got a terrific perspective and, has some valuable insights. But certainly if you do it, that gets us further along than we are now. And then we've got the commissioners have a little bit of knowledge about what they're volunteering for or it could spark some interest that otherwise, might not exist.
Yeah, no, I'd look forward to that. It's interesting. I don't know if you saw that article I sent to you, Kim, from 1992 in the New York Times.
Yes.
But the two end paragraphs, it says, James Bradley, the yacht club's liaison with Mr. Russell's commission, said the club supported the harbor plan, but hoped to win a permit to keep one mooring field, the number of spaces to be negotiated, as its own. And then the quote from Jim is, the lifeblood of the yacht club is access to moorings. Obviously, if you take the moorings away, you don't have a yacht club. This was a fairly substantial article in the New York Times, and the title was "When the Welcome Mat Has Its Limits," and that was
a good. Yes.
Well, anyway, it's interesting.
So I'm sort of sketching out a process piece. Help me out if you think this makes sense or not. So, first thing is a box presentation to the commissioners. That's what we were just talking about, Jeff's sort of training with Jim, potentially. Then a presentation to the public, which you would have to schedule, which is essentially the same presentation, potentially with some updates or revisions after presented to the commission. Then a survey to the public to get their feedback, and I'm not sure which comes first, the survey or the presentation to the public, but we could do them around the same time. Then, based on that, a body of work around intensive drafting of the plan and rules in updating both of those docs. And then a review of that body of work by the full HMC, and then feedback back to the drafting team to make any updates and changes based on that review. After that's done, then there would be a presentation to the public, and once again, potentially feedback and changes, and it'll loop back, ultimately resulting in a final version that has to go to the RTM.
Well, it goes first to the DEP.
Oh, really? Okay.
Oh, yeah, it goes first to DEP. Yeah, and what we should do is before we formally submit it to DEP, they should have basically we review it with them informally, because it can't be adopted locally until it's approved by the state. So we'd want to, find out who would be working with us, but see, I don't think that there's much in here that's going to be unless it's this, how much we can dredge out of the sandbar. But I think that's a good, and if I send to you two, the some examples of harbor management opinion surveys, we could put our heads together and cut that down, or come up with a a reasonable and shorter survey for the people, and that makes people feel that they have a role, and that
absolutely
we care about what they think rather than just doing something and saying here it is.
It actually could be marketed by the first selectman who's sending out a weekly email to everybody in the town.
Yes,
so
he
could promote it for us.
Yeah.
So Jeff, tell me to finish my little flow chart here. So there's a presentation to the public. We make changes as necessary based on that. When we feel good about the result of that work, there's a deep informal review followed by the formal deep review, followed by what? Selectmen or RTM? How does it go after that?
Well, there isn't a legal requirement for the selectmen, I guess, but we should have, as you know, just to follow the proper. We should involve the selectmen before going to the RTM. We wouldn't. I think there would be, you know, difficult feelings if we bypassed the selectmen, I believe.
Okay, and then RTM has to approve the plan?
Yeah. Remember, adopt it. The RTM adopts it as an update.
So I see that we review with the HMC, we do the drafting, we draft, we review the whole thing with the HMC, we get HMC feedback, and then informal deep.
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
Presentation, and then we
go.
A
formal deep. Right.
Oh, I was going to then go back to the public and the selectmen, and then formal deep and formal.
Oh, potentially. Yeah. I see what you're saying. Yeah, based on the informal or the formal? The informal, huh?
Yeah, informal would be after the whole commission reviews it and gives us our feedback.
Yeah.
And then we go to informally with, probably we could do the public presentation and the deep informally around the same time.
Mm-hmm.
Right? Because we're going to get feedback from both.
Yeah. See, but we're also, interrupting again, we're going to be interacting with deep soon, hopefully soon, on this dredging project. Mm-hmm. So when the Corps finishes this drawing, we need to discuss it with deep to see if they're going to object to the permitting of it. So that we're going to have an interaction with deep pretty soon, I think, and that you know, we can sort of set the stage for because everything else is, I don't believe that there's anything else that's really a significant change to what's already there, or what's already in the plan.
Notwithstanding this discussion about jurisdiction, apart
the jurisdiction, but we can leave that open. We can leave that as either a recommendation for evaluating or.
Right. You know, the other thing that that might cause a little headwind, and I don't know if that would be that if we come up with any kind of rules, you know, there's jumping and diving and all this stuff that's going on in the South Wharf.
It's separate, though.
I think the rules that need to be tightened up are going to create some controversy and pushback.
Yeah, and at least some interest. But I'm thinking that you know the groups that gave us that are getting involved.
The discussion, as you heard yesterday, set me off a little bit.
What discussion?
That came up yesterday in the mooring committee about.
Oh yeah.
The floater list.
Yeah. Well,
but
there's a lot of that going on.
Right, but that's an issue with the language in our current rules not being crystal clear enough.
Correct. But I'm thinking, for example, we'd have to ask, I believe Sasquatch contributed some money to the purchase of the lower wharf. We'd probably want to, in our public presentation, give that group a heads up that we're doing this. Sure. I don't know, the Historic District Commission. I mean, some of those folks.
Yes, they yes.
Know, right?
I think that's why we want to be careful in presenting this as not a new plan. It's an update to what's worked well, and the significant the things that have changed. You know, the lower wharf is now a town property, and the Harbor Commission contributed money substantially to purchase that property.
Okay. So it wasn't. Okay.
And so the plan can talk about the need for rules and regulations to ensure and maintain safe and beneficial use of that property, but the plan wouldn't have the rule in it. That's
but we were talking about updating the rules and procedures at the same time, Jeff. I'm assuming that we'd have to have the public speak to our proposed changes to the rules, right?
Well, that's a good. I don't think we have to. I think that's separate from the plan.
If the town code now says no swimming, and all we're doing is posting signs, I mean.
But But remember, we don't want to put the rules in the plan, because if it's in the plan...
That. But I was thinking we need to update. We do need to update the rules.
Oh, yes.
So the question is it part of this process, and do we just update the rules ourselves and not have the public see them? Is that process?
Oh, no, because you need a public hearing to deal with. You need to publish them.
Right. So I was envisioning that public hearing being part of this process.
I think we would want to separate it.
So there would be a separate process that's running along the same time as this?
Yeah.
That's doing the rules public hearing? I didn't put that in this flow chart.
I think so, because if there's anything that we change in the plan that would affect the rules, we'd want to know that. But the adoption of the rules is under a separate process, a separate review.
Okay, so let me all right, so there's two things that flow out of after we present the changes to the full HMC based on this drafting work. The drafting was the plan and the rules update. We review all of that with the HMC. Then there's a presentation to the public of the plan with its changes. Separately, there's a public hearing for the rules changes?
Yes. And we get into too much of the details maybe, but that was we had a question about that with the town attorney, whether we had to publish. The code now talks about it when the commission adopts rules, they have to be published in the newspaper, something like that. And the question was, well, given that now there's a town website, do we have to put it on the newspaper, or can we just put it on the website? And the last time we did this, the town attorneys wanted to be cautious and said, well, we'll have to put it in the newspaper.
So let me just make sure I have my little flow chart is right here. So with respect to the rules changes, the next step after the public feedback might be to revise those based on feedback, but DEEP doesn't get to review those, do they?
No, that's the main reason for keeping them separately, because
so those would, once approved, the rules, once we're done with those would go directly to the selectmen as a look at, involve them with respect to the rules?
I've got to go back and look. I don't know.
Okay.
The commission can do this on its own. So remember the RTM, when it set the mooring permit fee, for example, said not to exceed the amount authorized by the state statute. So when we set the permit fee, we don't have to go back to the RTM every time. But it also I looked on the computer. But my recollection is the Harbor Commission can do the rules and procedures on its own. Doesn't need approval from the RTM or DEEP.
Okay, so that's finished.
That's great.
Done.
That's great.
Yeah, that is great. So that would suggest that our rules update would be finished sooner if we did the rules updating and the plan updating simultaneously.
Oh, yes.
Because there's more steps for the plan than there are for the rules.
Now, ordinances...
Part of what I'm thinking here is it would be good, I don't know if Kim wants to do this, but it feels like a rough cut at what are the target dates for each of these steps in the process, so that we can sort of get in our heads what our target date goals are going to be to finish each one of these things. So it's possible maybe that the rules could be ready for next winter. But it may take longer to get through the process with respect to the plan update, for example.
Yeah.
Well, I think the rules could be ready for next boating season. I think that would be the...
Oh, that's what I'm thinking, right.
Yeah.
Over winter, we have them done, right.
Because in the town code, it's the powers and duties, 24-8, and one of the powers and duties is to adopt rules and procedures for implementing specific portions of the plan, as it shall deem necessary in the following manner. And then it talks about conducting a hearing before adopting it, notice of the time and place, blah, 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 published in a local newspaper. Following said public hearing, the Commission shall act upon said rules and procedures and make changes. Such changes, blah, blah, blah. Such rules and procedures, if adopted by the Commission, shall become effective after publication, once in a local newspaper. So that there's nothing in there about going back to the RTM or the selectmen or DEEP.
So there doesn't need to be a public hearing either, right?
Yes, a public hearing on the rules, yes. prior to adopting
hearing, then the HMC adopts them.
Yes.
That's a step.
So there are two public hearings?
No.
Public hearings on what's proposed and public hearing on what's or just one public hearing?
No, just one. Okay. Prior to adopting, the commission shall conduct a public hearing.
Right. And that's it. Then you're done with rules. Got it. Okay, that's helpful.
And the one thing we should talk about, though, is this, publication once in a local newspaper, whether that can be replaced with a publication on the website.
Yeah.
Now, if there's an ordinance, an ordinance, of course, has to be adopted by the RTM.
Right. Yeah, I don't foresee, but there's no ordinance related to the rules today, and I don't foresee it.
No.
Right. And the Fairfield Citizen, isn't that comes out once a week?
It was a question of expense, too, because we needed to have a whole page, like fine print to put the whole thing in.
Right. Typewritten, it's pages long, right. All right, we'll cross that bridge when we get to it.
Yeah.
All right, so I've got a very messy, scratched-out little flow chart here. But, this would be the basis for doing a project plan. We just have to assume some durations that each of these steps are going to take, and then we could figure out what our target would be to finish this effort.
Well, certainly if we can do this presentation to the commissioners and get some folks on board on Tuesday, we can, that gets us to the end of July. We can certainly have another meeting early in August to plan the presentation, to take a look at the survey.
Yes. Yep.
So that could be done.
I'd recommend even a project plan, Kim, and have the group agree on a project plan.
Okay.
The broad strokes of a plan. What are the steps? Yeah. What are the dates we're going to aim for on each of these?
Yeah. But I think just in terms of getting us going, I think we could get, if we can get additional commissioners and another meeting before we can have another meeting before the August 18th HMC meeting.
That would be ideal.
For sure.
Again, sorry to keep talking so much, but
no, you're not.
What could be a help, that I could see, and I certainly look forward to doing this because it's so important to me. But I think where members of the commission could help, even if they don't in the short term, even if they don't have a whole lot of background, is with the crafting of the survey questions to the public. Utilizing the, I can send you these other surveys, but what do we want to ask the public? But I think that's where other members could really help right away. I think in sort of brainstorming the questions to the public, and how to put them into a reasonable survey that people can answer. What we did with the other towns is we set up an account with a survey. It's called Survey Monkey, but it seems to work pretty well. And whether the town can do that on its own website without the commission having to pay $35 a month for it, but the Forestry Committee was going to have a survey that was going to be put on the town website that we had worked on, and I forget how they worked out the agreement, but they didn't proceed because there was a storm that took place and there was some substantial damage, and they were concerned that if they had a survey having to do with people's opinions toward trees in town at that time, they would get negative feedback. But and some person was tragically killed too. But we can do a good survey that would serve to not only inform the public as well as get information from them.
So how do you? We're not going to just ask each of them independently to submit questions.
Maybe the three of us. If I can send to you, well, not if I can, I will.
Okay.
Some of these surveys, and then we could put our heads together and see which sort of questions and what sort of modification would be applicable for what we're doing in Southport, and then put put together a draft that others could review.
Okay.
React to.
Okay.
So, Jeff, just so I'm clear in your expectations and thinking, my understanding was that your consulting agreement was going to be substantially being the writer for the updated version of the plan, right? And we would be, as commissioners, giving input and also reacting to your work, right? Is that how you were thinking?
Yeah, well, not like I'm trying to promote myself, but I think that's the way to do it. You wouldn't want individual commission members writing stuff and then trying to put it all together.
Right. And you want to have the last one also, so it would be consistent style and everything.
Yeah.
Right?
Only 25 years ago, that took 10 years. But
our role as commissioners would be editors and inputters, but not so much copy, not writing copy here, not providing the.
Yes. But when we started this, when I got involved, I guess first in 1987 or thereabouts, but there was substantial opposition, and the booklet I'm putting together of all these newspaper articles documents that. But there was substantial opposition, including from Sasquatch, about that the plan was going to ruin Southport Harbor. By opening up the mooring list, that it was just going to be a terrible loss of the local character. But the result is actually just the opposite, really. The plan served its purpose in getting, I don't want to say it in a crude way, but getting the state and the federal government out of management of the harbor on a day-to-day basis. And so we don't, I don't think anybody can argue now that the plan hasn't been beneficial and is beneficial, because we don't, the whole goal of the harbor management legislation initially was to increase home rule. People didn't, opponents didn't look at it that way, but it's certainly the way it's turned out.
My recollection, Kim, of our presentation to the RTM was they were both interested and unfamiliar with what we do.
Totally.
But my impression was that they were very complimentary about how we've been fulfilling our role as a commission and proud of Southport Harbor as an RTM. So I don't think, if they represent the way the public feels, I don't think it's very controversial today.
No, it shouldn't be now at all.
Especially if we don't include the jurisdiction issue.
Yeah, yes.
Right.
Yeah. And if we were to include that at a later date, the purpose is not to look for additional things to do, but to strengthen the town's ability to manage those critical natural areas.
Right.
Mm-hmm.
Okay, so Jeff, you're going to send us the surveys, so we can take a look at that.
Yeah.
You're good to present on Tuesday night to the commissioners.
With or without Jim, right? Yeah.
With or without Jim, yeah.
Right. Sounds like you're leaning towards an in-person Tuesday, Kim?
Well, the plan up. How are we going to get going on the plan update if we have half our commission doesn't even know what the plan really is?
Totally agree.
And I don't want you and me to be the only ones working on this. I mean, other folks need to step up and have ideas. So I would like Jim to be able to make it, but if he can't, we don't know what August will bring. I mean, that's the other thing.
Yeah, right.
And one of the other real advantages of getting more commissioners involved is that when we get to further into this process where the HMC has to approve what we're doing, it would be very good for others to have been part of the creating what's being approved rather than just at the 11th hour feedback.
Right.
Yeah. And the only thing I'd need help is, because I wouldn't know how to set up the presentation with the electronics of the thing.
Okay, I will ask Betty if there's someone who we need to get in touch with and how that would work.
Right. Now, Betty may not be able to join us on Tuesday. She'd have to take the minutes remotely, so that would mean there would be 9 commission members if everyone attended, and me and Ed. So it would be 11 people in the room spread out.
Right. Well, they're okay with 13.
Okay.
I told the town that would be a maximum of 13.
Yes.
So, and they've set up the phone connection, so I'm assuming they can set up the the other electronics that we would need. But I'll cover that with Betty.
Right. And if we put the presentation on the town website,
correct,
then people would have access to it, members of the public who wanted to call in and listen.
Absolutely.
Yes, they could view it on their computer.
Right. And so could you get that to Betty?
Yes.
Okay.
Yes.
I'll tell her. I'll tell her that too.
I will. Sorry.
Do you remember the name of the guy who runs IT for the town? I have it somewhere, but I don't remember.
I have it somewhere. Yeah.
I'll look for it. You know what I was thinking I could do is just reach out to him and ask him if we wanted to do a survey online on the website. Is there a recommendation that he has of how we might go about doing that?
Oh, that's a great idea.
Have that information.
That's a great idea.
Just so that's not going to change. We can just know in advance how we'd go about doing that.
Mm-hmm.
It's Dave Kelly.
Dave Kelly.
Dave Kelly.
Right.
And in fact, what I will do, Jeff, is I will email Dave and tell him what we're going to do and find out if he's the guy Betty would need to get in touch with. So that
do you want to ask him about the survey then, too, if you're going to reach out?
I'll do that too. Yeah,
okay,
I'll ask about the survey. I'll do that. No, I'll get in touch with him.
All right, cool.
Okay.
Well, this is very good. I started out this morning with talking with those five people from the Corps of Engineers and thinking we never had this could have detailed a discussion, 15 years ago with the dredging project. But it's clearly something that they have a number of people working on, and it's part of their. Hopefully, nothing changes. Nothing, but.
Well, hopefully, we're moving forward on several fronts.
Yes. Yes.
So, Kim and Jeff, I'm going to write up some brief minutes and send them to both of you. And
could
you let me know if you have comments, because I don't want to send them to the town bill that you've approved them.
Right.
Okay.
Definitely. And Jack, thank you for doing that.
No problem.
Jeff, thank you for getting the presentation together. I will contact Dave Kelly, and I'll get back to both of you on that, and we'll be in person on Tuesday at 4:45, and hope that. And Jeff, I'll have that right at the front of the meeting. So if Jim can join us, he doesn't have to stick around for the rest of it. But we can open the meeting with the presentation.
Okay, and I won't be able to get this other stuff to you until later tonight.
That's all right. That's fine.
Right.
That's fine.
Thank you so much. Good.
This has been a good meeting.
Good.
Yeah.
Thank you both so much.
Right. Talk to you later.
Okay.
Bye-bye.
Take care.
Bye.